Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am thrilled to be here with Erin Levine of HelloDivorce and Dorna Moini of Documate. And I'm Maddy Martin. I'm the head of growth and education for Smith.ai. We're a virtual receptionist and web chat service serving small businesses, mostly solo and small firm attorneys. And we are really excited to present this topic to you today on DIY legal products so that you can expand your reach, your productivity, your profitability using technology and implementing it in really cool new ways for your law practice. And even if you're not an attorney and you're joining us today, I think you'll gain a ton of valuable knowledge around how to automate, how to delegate, how to empower your audience to make really good decisions about how they can best engage with your business and how you can expand your reach and work with a larger population of potential clients. So before we get started, I'm really excited to bring in our panelists, and they're going to lead most of the conversation today. I'll just be here steering them a little bit. But let's start with Erin. Can you share a little bit about your background and about HelloDivorce specifically?
Sure. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Erin Levine, although I'm seeing a lot of really familiar names. Some of the most entrepreneurial lawyers I know are here, so you could probably teach us a few things. But I'm super excited to be here. This is definitely by far my favorite topic, and Maddy knows that. That's why she's smiling. I am a 15-year lawyer. I'm a certified family law specialist in California. I have a law firm, Levine Family Law Group, that I opened in May 2009. But for the past 3 years, I've been focused primarily on HelloDivorce, which is an online platform that helps people to affordably and easily and, affordably and easily navigate divorce in as quick as possible with as low of conflict as possible. So we have several different membership levels, which I'm sure we'll get into today, but it ranges everything from a pure DIY divorce start to finish all the way through managed services, with our sweet spot really being uncontested divorces and mediated divorces.
Wonderful. Dorna, why don't you share a little bit about your company, Documate?
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, and really excited to see everyone here. Similarly, I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces, and excited to share more with you guys and have a dialogue. My name is Dorna. I am one of the founders of Documate, and we're a no-code document automation software platform. But we are not just document automation. We allow you to build full-fledged legal tech products. And just a little bit of background on how we started. So I guess I currently still am a barred lawyer, although I don't practice anymore. But I practiced and saw a lot of inefficiencies in the ways that I was delivering legal services to my clients. And so wanted to build out a tool so that lawyers could automate their own expertise. Well, no matter the area of law you practice, no matter what jurisdiction you practice in, as long as you can come up with a rules-based system and rules-based questions and logic as to how those questions should be asked and how they should go into those documents, you can build a legal tech product on Documate. So that's really our goal.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, it's great to have you both here. And, just as framing for this topic, we know that more so now than ever, I mean, attorneys were already spread thin, already competing in a marketplace. And now with childcare, with elder care, with COVID, there are a lot of things that are spreading us even thinner. So what we see is that competition is high, maybe the sort of range of your clients is expanded so that you can serve a larger market, but how do you do that knowing the value of your time? And also it's hard to expand, it's hard to hire talent right now. How do you grow your practice in a way that doesn't, increase costs to the same degree, where you have a controllable pool of resources that you can count on the quality scaling with your quantity that you're serving, and also competing in a marketplace where small firms have a huge advantage in moving fast in getting access to technologies that are cheaper than ever. But really, it comes down to bandwidth and then also productivity that allows you to focus where you are most valuable in your practice. are you putting yourself towards the highest value tasks? And creating products like legal DIY products, you can actually scale yourself faster and better than almost any other means or any other method, and really create a method almost that is something you can replicate across your practice and profit off of. So Erin, you know, one of the things that you also touch on often here is the problem with affordability when it comes to legal services. We can talk about profitability, we can talk about productivity, but as we sort of get this conversation going, I also wanted to have you touch on how to reach those unmet needs and that population that has been somewhat underserved here. How are you approaching that? And Dorna, Erin, you can both chime in here, but I think Erin first, just because that was something that inspired you originally, I believe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. The way that small firms and small businesses can move is at such a rapid pace, and no corporation could possibly keep up with how quickly we can all move, which is extremely important in a time where a lot of us want to be first to market or get out there as soon as possible, especially in light of COVID. So I would absolutely agree with you there. And I would say that, you know, my initial interest was hearing those statistics about just how many people either can't afford a lawyer, can afford one, but don't want to pay for one, or don't even know that they need one. And those statistics were insane. But I also wanted to know, like, is there a real market? Is there money? Will people pay money to receive services in the legal world that aren't necessarily from lawyers? So where did I start? I started by looking at Google AdWords. I started by Googling DIY in different practice areas. And what I found over time was that these companies were paying $100,000 to $500,000 a quarter for ads. And in many cases, they are spending over $1 million, sometimes $2 million in Google AdWords a year. And what that told me is there is a huge market, because these companies wouldn't be doing it over and over again year after year unless they were making big bucks, unless they're just crazy, which I doubt it, because who does that? And so that got me really excited, because I also took a look, as did I'm sure many of you, to see what the options are out there. And they didn't look so good. They didn't target that need, that consumer need that all of us who are lawyers know what it looks like, right? Like, business professionals are amazing and they can help us rapidly scale and do all sorts of things in many different ways. But us lawyers, no one knows the consumer better than us. And I saw that the options that were out there weren't entirely meeting the need. So there goes my AirPod. Hi. So that it sort of talks a little bit towards that huge market out there for people that really can't afford a lawyer, and people who can afford but don't want to pay. And then as far as the people who don't even know they need a lawyer, well, those are the people that we targeted to educate and giving them reliable information so that they could trust us. A longer sales cycle, but they could begin to trust us and see whether or not they needed assistance, and if so, which package might be best for them.
And I think, you know, so you touch on something that's interesting, both at the consumer level of lawyer services, but also peer level, right? I mean, there are two sort of populations here. One are the potential clients who you're trying to reach now, and you sort of say, I'm going to do competition research. I'm going to go see who is serving these people who are searching under these terms that maybe before I didn't think I was going to target as my audience, or I want to know what people are searching for if they don't think that they need an attorney. It's not necessarily intuitive to do that research for not necessarily your target audience, but who you know you're missing, and maybe you're purposefully missing up until that point. But one of the other things that we see with law practices is that there's also this, oh, that's not me. I have plenty of people who are in my available pool. But when it comes time for, you know, a pandemic or something like that that's unexpected, you start to get creative and you start to expand your resources. And then there's also government policies that are happening right now where increase the competition in the market at a time when also the cost of technology is lower than ever. So in terms of democratizing legal services, it's also a boon to the lawyers in the legal market to say, actually, it's easier than ever to be a solo small firm attorney and actually yourself create these systems where you can serve this larger market without having to yourselves go and find a tech resource to implement it with you, right? You'd have to hire some fancy company, develop this entire system, spend tens of thousands of dollars. Actually, now it's easier for you to get access to the technology that makes it easier for your audience to get access to the legal services. And that vertical sort of continuum is really important here. Dorna, can you talk a little bit about your technology? And we'll go into like a deep dive in that after Erin does a deep dive into her own, but just broad strokes, were you able to create a technology that is accessible at a price point and sort of DIY point, lack of tech skills, lack of computer science background point, where it's really democratized to a group of people who didn't themselves see, you know, in the mirror, a technologist?
Yeah, definitely. So a little bit more about my background and how we started it. Originally, we did not actually set out to build a platform. I was actually trying to automate the process for domestic violence restraining orders, which was something I did pro bono in my practice. And I got together with my now co-founder and we built out, you know, I did all the research on the law and how it should work out, and he implemented it and spent several months building the technology. And that process led us to think, this is all rules-based. You can put this all into sort of like a little flow chart and tell it where you want it to go. Yes, you need your legal expertise to do that, but as long as we can convey that to a machine, then we can build something. So that was what inspired us to build something DIY, because the law, for the most part, is rules-based. And where those rules, those if-then statements that we have in statutes and case law, where those break down is where litigation happens. And so then, you know, then it's not really a process-oriented system. But that's what we set out to build. And interestingly, what we've seen is not only are lawyers on our platform selling to other consumers, to consumers, but they're also selling to other lawyers. Sometimes there may be another law firm who doesn't want to build their own platform, but after you've done all this work to build it out, they want to buy yours. So that's another interesting thing that we've been seeing in the market as well.
So when it comes to, you know, creating a product for lawyers, Dorna, like, how have you built that in a way that is accessible? And then we'll go to Erin and she can say what she's built on top of it.
Yeah, definitely. So the system is no code. So what you do is just like as if you were going to get onto something like Typeform or Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, if you've ever used any of those. You go in, you add a series of questions. You have a lot of options as to what types of questions you want to add, whether they be text questions or emails or numbers or even file uploads, looping items, which are repeating items if you're collecting information from about children. So we give you kind of the whole tool set that you would need, and it's just a click and touch and go. And then what you do with that information, because it's kind of a two-piece process, it's the data gathering, collecting all the information about your client. So that's equivalent to if you were going to sit across the desk from your client and gather all that information. That's everything that you need to go back to your desk and draft them their documents. So you put that into the system. And then the second part of the process is connecting those to your documents. So whether those are PDFs or judicial counsel forms that are court forms, or whether those are Word documents that are your own templates, maybe your own custom templates that you already have brackets in, you'll connect those and add logic, complex conditional logic, math, gate calculations, simple fields, anything that you need to build that out, we've kind of given you as the tool set, and you don't need to learn any fancy syntax to do that.
Got it. So let's go to Erin. Erin, I don't know if you want to share your screen or just talk a little bit around your process. I think that's what so many people are really interested in hearing who are joining us today. You know, you didn't have all the answers when you got started. And I think that we want to make it super clear to everyone here that it's not going to be necessarily a totally straight path. But if you look at where you are now, you know, the payoff is immense. And that learning process is something that we're very, you know, attuned to. So share with us how, like, where did you get started? What were some of the stumbling blocks maybe along the way, or assumptions that were debunked? And how did you build this thing to the point where it is now winning awards and getting a lot of recognition?
Thanks. So I think what I will do is share my screen in a minute just to show you the low budget version of the Divorce Navigator and the more expensive version to let you see two different ways that you can build off of Dorna's software. And she's not paying me to say this, but when Dorna first came to me with this software, she was very, very early on. She had just created it and she told me about it, and I was like, done. Like, this is it. This is so amazing. And so I knew I made a lot of mistakes early on, but one thing that I did correctly is I knew I wanted to use Documate. Why reinvent the wheel? And I also knew that I wanted to create a standalone product. So when you're thinking about building your legal product, you really have to differentiate between your lead generator and your standalone product, right? One is getting people in the door, oftentimes a longer sales cycle, displaying your authority, explaining to them why you are the best. The other is asking people to open their pocketbooks sight unseen. So a quick sales cycle, a great user flow, wonderful on-point call to actions. So I did know that, and that allowed me to really focus without spending a lot of money on that user experience. So let's see, I'm going to share my screen. Oh,
I need to give you permission, probably. I will do that. Okay, you should be all set.
All right, great. Can everyone see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the California Divorce Navigator. This is what our DIY consumers use if they've purchased a monthly membership. The only difference is that they would have gone through an onboarding sequence, and in this case, I've already done that, so you're landing on the home page. And in every state that we are in or we are expanding in, we've broken the divorce process up into 3 steps. So you'll see here we have the petition, the financial disclosures, and the agreement and judgment. As you know, divorce isn't always linear, which is why we want to make it very flexible so people can jump back in. But we also didn't want a DIY process like most companies that have you do all the forms at once, because most people want to get their documents filed, but aren't ready to close out their divorce, right? It's a process, like a lot of different legal actions, landlord, tenant, immigration, bankruptcy. So you click on where you're at, and this is where Documate makes us look really, really fancy. And that is that when you're ready to start on any step, you click start and you go to Dorna's interview. And this is where we just use really consumer-friendly terms, right? If you are working with a consumer, especially a consumer who maybe wouldn't be able to afford a lawyer, maybe doesn't have higher education, you want to make sure that all of your questions are intuitive and are put in such a way that will elicit the best answer. Because many times, not always, but many times, people will not be having a lawyer review these. ultimately generated forms when they're done. But anyhow, these guys, they use this, they can save, come back to it whenever they want. And when they are finished with the interview, as Dorna said, that the judicial counsel forms or whatever form that you are pleading that you have used will pop out for them. And then they return back to the Divorce Navigator. If they're a true DIY, they're going to need to follow the steps to learn how to file and serve. And if they are a DIY pro, they can click to have us now file and serve the documents. So this is like our Python-based web application that, that we put a lot of thought and time and design into and money. And then this is another example of a WordPress version of a web application that, that you can build for a lot less money and a lot less time. This is our Colorado Divorce Navigator. And you'll see that on the homepage, you can access and edit your completed forms whenever you want. So you can always go back to Documate and see what forms you're working on. You can continue on them, you can edit them, you can do whatever it is you want, but that's your home base. And what we did here, I'll just show you. I'm almost done, Maddy.
No, fine. This is fantastic. Everyone is enjoying it.
So assuming you're filing a single petition, what you'll see is that with what our users able to do is at any point, if they have a question and they want to go back and look at a resource or know if they should file jointly or separately, they can exit back to the Divorce Navigator, which will take them to the step that they were on. So this is all using technology that's already out there. This is me as a lawyer being able to create something on WordPress that people can use that is doable. And then like it obviously it continues on. There's resources available based on what the user's need is on a particular step. And that's a WordPress Divorce Navigator.
That's awesome. So I have a couple of questions, Erin, if you don't mind. You might even want to continue sharing your screen too, but there's sort of the pricing question that I think is on everyone's mind. There's the question of also, is there a trial or getting started? You know, how do you approach, so you've got a trial here. How do you approach structuring this in a way that someone can get a peek behind the curtain and see what they're getting into? Because most people don't have experience even filling out legal forms, let alone working with an attorney. And then where do you sort of like step in or check in along the way? Walk us through sort of your mindset here and what you built and maybe how it's changed even.
Sure. So there is no question at all that our sales went way up when we started to offer a trial period. This is a new way to do law. Maybe not to you guys, because we've known about LegalZoom and some of these other platforms for years, but for consumers, they've been told that the only way to effectively do anything in law is to have a lawyer. So, and they've been scammed before, right? They've gotten a will off of some, you know, website that wasn't legal in their state. So they're a little bit more savvy because they're willing to try something online, but also they're afraid of being scammed. And so the 7 days free code, actually our we've been A/B testing this, our 14 days free has been the most valuable in terms of signups. But right now we're working with the 7 days free. And very few people have like used it to like finish all their forms, maybe 1 or 2 people. The vast majority of people continue on after they've had their free trial period. So I think that, you know, when we were developing this and talking about price points, it was really important to me to, number one, have people be able to access what they need for an affordable amount. Number two, for them to be able to cancel at any time, upgrade at any time, and access a lawyer at any time. What we found was people are much more likely to consult with a lawyer, even people that never planned on hiring a lawyer to begin with, if they're only hiring a lawyer for a specific task, right? Everybody or most people can come up with a few $100 for an hour with a lawyer. They can get a loan, they can ask their spouse. Actually, we're integrating with Justice for Me soon, so you'll be able to do this at even lower price point. But for now, you know, almost everyone can come up with that money at least for one session with a lawyer. And so in terms of the true DIY folks, while we aren't talking to them directly for the most part, this is something that we built. They're on their own. If they have technical questions, they can use our chat bot at the bottom. They can use Intercom, which is not necessarily something I'd recommend. There's other ones that are better out there. But what we're doing is we have an email sequence that's going out to them that's nurturing them through the process. So they might get worksheets from us on creating a shared parenting plan. They might get access to vetted professionals who are great with financial stuff if they seem to be stuck on the financial stuff. They might get words of encouragement of someone who's been there. Very different, again, from a lead generator for a law firm where we would be conveying our authority. We would be conveying what it is that we're great at. We'd have client testimonials, a little bit more different on this service side. And then, of course, I'm also talking about after the purchase. After the purchase, we're trying to encourage them to use the software the best they can and to keep purchasing versus like beforehand when we want to get them to sale. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, you did. It makes a lot of sense. And we're seeing some questions right now, Erin, and I want to sort of divert our attention to a couple questions so that we can answer them. And I think they're on a lot of people's minds. You know, are you establishing an attorney-client relationship here? And what role do disclaimers play in sort of your introduction to the concept just on your website, you know, for the legal forms and products? And what have you found is a comfortable disclosure or wording that you're putting on your sites that you feel is, you know, within the realm of you being a practicing attorney?
Okay, good question. Always a question from lawyers. So, I mean, it's been litigated over and over again, specifically by LegalZoom, whether or not this is establishing an attorney-client privilege on its own or legal services. That's the unauthorized practice of law. And at least in the moment, it is not. I don't personally, nor do my lawyers, have any connection to the DIY service levels at all, unless they upgrade or pay for a legal coaching session. And that would be a different story. And at that point, we are providing legal services. As soon as they pay, it's subject to a conflict check. They get a fee agreement and they sign off from the law firm that's providing the legal services, and the money gets deposited into the law firm as opposed to HelloDivorce. So that's kind of how we're navigating right now these ethical landmines. If you have any other questions about it, you're welcome to look at our terms and conditions, our privacy policy. You're also welcome to go to the footer of our site and sign up for a free membership. You're going to hear a lot about divorce. So don't leave your computer open if your spouse is sitting next to you, or give them a heads up. But you'll get a sense for how we educate the consumer on the differences between a relationship with somebody who's purely handling the procedural stuff, filing and serving, somebody, the software and what that can do and what that can't do for you, and then when and how to bring in a lawyer or a mediator.
Yeah, no, I think that that's important. And also, even before the session, we had some questions come in because this is even related to creating online courses and webinars and programs like that. You know, it is important to have a disclaimer that previews what's in probably the full terms and conditions. You know, are you giving people just a short synopsis as a heads up of what this is and isn't? Thank you for sharing your screen again. So it's really nice to make it plain language, you know, somewhere upfront, and then also to dive in deeper in the terms and conditions. So obviously you have to have those, you know, I's dotted and T's crossed. Now,
and a little bit more broadly on that, the ABA has actually kind of more generally said that as long as you have a disclaimer that's reasonably understandable, properly placed, and not misleading, that you don't provide legal services, like you can take a look, I'm sure, at Erin's site, then you're not entering into an attorney-client relationship. And that's mostly been upheld. As Erin said, the LegalZoom case, they had it in their terms of service, and that was upheld.
Yeah, and that's great information, Dorna. And the other thing I would just keep in mind is, like, we have a terms and condition that's for just governing our free materials, because as you know, we have lots and lots of different resources that help people on any stage that they're in divorce. But then we also have terms and conditions, some of which was at least in part drafted by ethics lawyers, relating to the products themselves, depending on what level you're purchasing. And a lot of this research has been done before, so it's not that Dorna and I necessarily had to go out and consult with a lawyer every time we want to do something. It's more of researching, you know, what Axiom's done and what other companies have done to make it work.
Yeah, to get a sense for that precedent. That makes a lot of sense. There are a few questions I want to go through a little bit quickly, just so that we can also get to the back end of Documate and see what's going on there and what you were inspired to create from, what sort of the infrastructure here that you built on. But on the front end, actually, there were questions around, did you hire a designer? You know, obviously WordPress has a lot of nice designs, but this is quite custom. So do you do it in-house? Did you contract it? I'm sure everyone wants to know if they can tap into whatever resource you use, so share.
Yeah, I'm always happy to share resources. I've tried, like everyone, from Fiverr and Upwork, and I have my horror stories, as I'm sure many of you do too. I had to come up with a budget, and I had to decide whether or not I was going to invest a lot of money and time or not. So for this project, I did hire a designer. I actually hired a design team to do an initial sprint, where I was doing surveys of consumers who had been through divorce or were just starting divorce or were in the midst of it, to kind of get a better understanding of what they wanted and needed. That was 4 years ago. A lot has changed since then. There's a lot of great writing on it. If you subscribe to, what is it, Charles, the Legal Tech newsletter.
Charlie,
what's his name again?
Maybe? Is that
Yes. So he has like great ideas and great articles that you can take a look at. And
Dorna, do you want to type that into the chat? So
yeah, I actually need to find.
And I can put the link too in a minute.
That would be great. So a couple other questions. So I think there's one question from Tim. Did you learn to code yourself, or do you hire someone else to do it? It sounds like actually it's sort of a no-code environment here. Like, other than actually WordPress and implementing the design and front end, you basically plugged in the forms you had created in Documate. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that the design itself is not nearly as important as the copy. You have to define the problem that you're solving and how you're going to get the consumer to solve it, what you're going to give them so that they can solve their problem. So like, if you're not on Donald Miller's Story Brand, or you're not listening to Online Marketing Made Easy by Amy something, then you're really missing out, because we need to step outside the lawyer box. You guys, most of you are lawyers, and you know your craft better than anyone. Anything you put out, any form you put out, is going to be better than 95% of what's on the market. That's the easy part, right? And you can create a form, automate a form in no time, in a day. That's through using Dorna's software, and then simply make a landing page, right? I used 99 designs for my membership option page. It cost me $300. It was so cheap, I had them do 2, and I A/B tested both of them to see which sold better. But like, you can start small, absolutely. You don't need to go out and build a Python application. I don't know that I necessarily would have done that had I realized what consumers actually need.
And how would you have known that it was valuable enough for you to make that investment, right? So I think most of the time
Right.
there are expectations for design that are within you and not necessarily reflective of what the marketplace needs. So if you hit on something that is understandable and easy enough to use and interact with, the threshold is actually fairly low when it comes to what does the consumer actually need and connect with. What you make into your own branding, and there's a question about that I'll get to next, that's really about your wherewithal. You know, do you have the time, money, and energy to get to that point where you are making a stronger investment? And, you know, are the returns demonstrating that you should invest that? Now, a question here, did you have any thoughts around, it's called HelloDivorce, right? And then there's HelloSign, as someone brought up. How do you think about your branding for a legal product? How did you connect that to your existing brand? How did you sort of conceive of it? And that goes alongside the next question, which is, when you're approaching a project this big, how do you tackle it? Like, do you need to think about your branding up front, right?
Well, you need to think about your ideal customer avatar up front, who you're targeting. And again, whether it's a legal lead generator or whether it's a standalone product. And I think that is like number one key. If you don't know who you're targeting, then it's going to get lost. There's too much noise and you won't actually get who you need to get. So don't be afraid to be too like very nuanced. And don't offer too many options. I think us lawyers are perfectionists and we're always trying to make the product better, which is what I did with the web app when people were just fine with what we had before, because the biggest piece that they're using is Documate and that's working for them. So definitely like don't be afraid to like take your lawyer hat off for a moment and like focus on who's your consumer, where do they shop, what do they do, what do they need, what other services might they need while they're going through whatever legal problem you're solving for. And that's a great way to develop a market plan that is cheap but effective.
Yeah, if you haven't already heard about creating personas, I really encourage, I actually have a link that was up on my browser before I started this Zoom around creating personas and a video on it that's very short on YouTube that I'll share with everyone in the recap email. But if you don't know what that is, to sort of structure your persona or personas of your ideal customer, that's an exercise that's really valuable so you know who you're building for. Now, let's table the sort of how do you tackle a project this big question until we give Dorna a chance to show us what the product actually is, and that may answer some of these questions. So Dorna, I'd like to give the floor to you and you can give us a peek behind the curtain and see really what is it that is being built here? What are these tools that you speak of that are so easy?
Definitely. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you a few different slides of what the system looks like, because I don't want to bore you all with a full product demo.
Sure.
And then I'll also put a link in the chat for if anyone wants a full product demo, we usually do like a 20-30 minute session. We can talk specifically about your forms and answer all your questions there as well. Okay. So let me share my screen and I have a few slides here. So hopefully you guys can see this now.
Yep.
And basically, I know I went a little bit over what the process is. So I'm going to show you what that looks like on the screen. So the first step of the process is building out your questionnaire. So this is where you're going to think about, kind of like Erin was talking about in her design thinking and her design sprints, thinking about how you should phrase the questions up front. And it doesn't necessarily correlate with exactly how the documents are set up. The documents may start with court information and then go into attorney information and go into your information. But you may want to ask questions in a different way that gives the user kind of a feel that they're participating in a process, that they have the support of your product, that you're giving them little tips and tidbits as they go through. And so what they'll do is they'll add a series of questions. And as I said, this sort of works a little bit like type form or Survey Monkey where you add questions, and they can be text questions, multiple choice questions, checkbox questions with multi-select. We also have a specific type of question called a repeating item question, which allows you to ask all the information about anything that there could be 0 of, or there could be hundreds of. So a really good example of that is children. You don't know upfront whether your client's going to have 0 children or 20 children. And so you can set up all the questions, and it'll keep kind of looping through those and ask you if there are any more. So you'll first set up all the questions, and then you'll set up logic for each question. So for example, if you have a question about, child custody and child visitation, you may only want to ask those questions if the person actually has children. Otherwise, you don't want to subject them to a bunch of questions and fields that they don't necessarily need to be looking at. So you'd add logic there. You would say, if children is more than 0, then show these questions. And so you can do that throughout with all of your different questions. The next step of the process is to then load your documents and connect that information to your documents. So in this prior slide, every single question is going to have a variable name, as you can see in the second little section right here. And the variable name could be something like, let's say your question were, what's your name? And another question might be, what's your spouse's name? The variable name would be the descriptor of that. So it could be something like your name or spouse's name or marital status. And you're going to use those variable names inside of your documents. So part of that is going to be kind of a mail merge type functionality where you literally just say, I want the spouse's name to appear here in the document. And part of it is going to be logic. So you may say, if the person is married and they have more than 3 children, then maybe you want something specific to show up in the documents. You can also do, if you're doing any kind of numerical calculations, let's say you're doing fee waivers or adding up assets and subtracting debts and expenses, you can do calculations there using those variable names. So you could say something like housing expenses plus entertainment expenses minus student loans, and that could be an equation that you have somewhere as a field in your document. And so that's really it. Those are the 2 steps. You set up your questions, you set up your documents, and then you can run it, and then you'll have something kind of like what Erin showed you, where you can use this web form either internally or in a client-facing manner. And you can also add all kinds of customization. So we have some default styles that we have for you, but if you want to put your own logo up top, you want to change all the colors of the buttons and the fonts, that's also something you can do and is completely customizable as well, completely white labelable. So that's the process there. And I'll also just kind of drop our link to our demo calendar in the chat in case anyone wants a longer demo at any point.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's go to Erin and touch back on this. Wow, this is a huge elephant. How do I eat this one bite at a time? What does it even look like to take one leg on? Like, how do you tackle something this big? And when can you even bring it to market if it's one piece at a time?
Yeah, I'm terrible with systems, so I'm probably the worst person to talk about this, but at the same time, I was able to do it. So that should give a lot of people, some inspiration. So one thing is, I looked at this product at like a startup and not so much like a law firm. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are a million great resources on how to build a product or how to build a startup. So I started there with a lot of checklists. I also started really with creating, like I said, that brand, that customer avatar, who I wanted to attract, what they looked like in the world, and what type of things did they need. And then I started having conversations with anyone who would talk to me about this stuff. My brother still calls it my hobby. He's a lawyer, a practicing lawyer, but he just thought it was insane, but he would talk to me about it. And anyone who would, good, bad, ugly, what would you want in, a legal product? What do you like about PayPal? What do you like about Amazon? Like, what works? So then you can focus on what it is you're building, who's it for, and now you can put the focus on what it is you need to get there. You need a website. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it has to have good content. You need to be able to take payment, which you can now do through Documate. Are you still doing the Stripe integration, Dorna?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
And that's been a great way to kind of monetize as well for lawyers.
So like you come up, which is amazing. You come up with this list and then you determine what it is you're good at and what it is you like. So personally, I don't think you can outsource content to begin with. You can get someone to help you, but that is so, so, so important. You're learning how to speak to your client. You're teaching whoever you ultimately work with how to convey what it is you sell to your client. So I would really keep that in-house to the extent possible. And then, you know, until this year, I had no employees for HelloDivorce. So it was all contractors. And it was just a matter of budget, doing most of it on my own. And then to the extent I needed help, what I could spend and where I needed help the most. So it's just really like taking it one step at a time. Another thing that you can do is try out different ways to deliver legal services. Maybe not necessarily start with a product, but just kind of test the market. So let me just show you real quickly an example.
And Erin, as you're doing that, I think one thing to just touch on here is also, you know, a lot of these systems can be used, and Dorna and I have talked about this a bunch, I'm sure you have too. You can use these systems internally. You don't necessarily even have to sell them. It can be for consistency and speed. It doesn't necessarily have to start off with something that you're going to charge someone for. You know, you can sort of own dog food first and say, how does this work? Does it work for me? Am I not catching certain things in the flow that I need to better account for and better streamline? Use it internally first and then say, okay, it's ready for market.
Oh my gosh, yes. I can't even believe I didn't bring that up. I mean, we used to have one at the firm, we used to have one assistant for every 1 to 2 lawyers. Now we have one assistant who is amazing, but for all 6 of our lawyers.
Wow.
I mean,
wow,
that's insane, right? But that's what we've been able to do by using,
your ratio
by automating.
is common, you know, like that's not an uncommon ratio to have 1 assistant or 1 paralegal for 2 attorneys.
So this, what you're seeing on your screen is nothing novel or different, right? But a lot of lawyers don't do something like this, right? They don't make it really easy for somebody to pay.
You don't put your prices online, that upfront.
You don't put your prices online. You don't make you might do a scheduling, which we route to, but you might not necessarily make it that easy for someone to purchase. You could start with that. Like with any website application nowadays, you can build this really easily, either on your own or by hiring a contractor for not very much money. And you, of course, I have lots of things in my cart. But you, of course, don't have to, you know, there's some ethical things you want to consider, right? They need to purchase subject to conflict check. You don't want to get anything other than their basic information before you do that conflict check. You want to have, if it's a limited scope or limited, you know, practice area, you want to make sure that you put that in there as well. But it's totally doable, and that's a great way to start and see if there's interest. Another thing that I would absolutely recommend you do, and I did it before I started charging people for a service, is free downloads, right? Giving people really good, valuable information. Most lawyers hide the ball. There's no reason to hide the ball, because consumers are going to be looking for this information everywhere. Wouldn't you rather have them get the proper information? Then they trust you, then they hire you. So that's something that you can do right away. We have tons on the site if you want to check it out, but you know, literally just write the content and then have a designer for $100 or less, like design it, make it pretty, and you're good to go. If you're selling an online or a video course, even easier. There's so many, there's Udemy, there's Kajabi, there's like a ton of different online platforms that will do like the vast majority of what you need for you, including the website.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As we're sort of wrapping up here, I thought that we could, wrap it up with one, short, we'll keep it short, but it could be a very long topic itself, which is, how are you pricing this, and how are we seeing people move away from the billable hour? Efficiency used to be sort of a dirty word, and we want to protect the billable hour in the sense that we're protecting lawyers' time and maintaining the value of it. But how do you balance that, Erin? Like, how do you respond to some of the questions that are along the lines of, I don't really want to be so efficient that I can't bill properly for my time, because a lot of it went into the investment and the ongoing maintenance of these products and services. How do you protect at least your income when you have products like this and you're not quite sure, is it going to pay the bills?
Yeah, I mean, consumers are getting savvier and savvier, so they're looking for different options. It depends what kind of law you do. Like if you're really nuanced or you're a top litigator, people are going to expect the billable hour, they're going to understand it. There's people like me out there explaining the value and why it's so important. But for me, we had a firm that was sort of doing middle of the road, middle class divorces, and people didn't want to pay a retainer and not know how much money they were going to spend throughout their entire divorce. And so we had to come up with a creative way to make money based on volume versus like the bespoke, few cases that we would take on each month. And so, you'll see like the prices for lawyers on our site are not cheap at all. They just, because we do educate the consumer on how important it is for lawyers to step in when and how. But the vast majority of our DIY products once they're built, involve no time for me, maybe some updating here and there, but now it's just pure profit. So every time you get an email that says someone purchased DIY, then that's another $99 of recurring income that's in your bank account. So I think it's really about, at this point, diversifying and trying out new things and seeing what works best for you and your team.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to not think that it's going to be some overnight shift. It never is. You're not going to all of a sudden stop having hourly, consultations, meetings, work with clients, and all of a sudden just be behind the screen, right? Coding or not coding. So how do people get in touch with you? I'll say a few words about Smith.ai, and then, we've got 5 minutes left. So if you have other questions, you can type them in the chat, you can email us, and we will follow up afterwards. So Erin, we'll start with you, and then Dorna, and I'll tie it all in. So Erin, how do you
my handle across social media is @HelloDivorce. So I'm the one managing those accounts. So it's me. And you can also email me at erin@hellodivorce.com or find me on LinkedIn at Erin Levine.
Wonderful. I'm just typing that into the chat.
Thank you.
Sure. Dorna?
Wonderful. Yeah, and you can find me at Documate Law on social media. My email is dorna@documate.org, and I'm Dorna Moini on LinkedIn as well.
Wonderful. And Dorna, how much does it cost to sort of get started with Documate? Is there also a free trial? Is there anything that people should know who are here today?
Definitely. So our pricing starts at $83 a month for the annual light monthly plan. And that kind of goes up from there depending on what other customizations you want. For anyone who's here today, we'd love to offer you, we usually have a 7-day free trial. We'd love to offer you a 30-day free trial until the end of the month. So just sign up, ping me, and I'll extend your trial for you and make sure you have that.
So that's the month. October 2020, since it's the 30th of September.
Exactly.
Just for the
until October 3rd, until October 2020. And then we also have free customer support 7 days a week. So if you guys need any help at all, just let us know, and you can always book a time on our calendar as well.
Wonderful. And I will share your calendar link in the recap email. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Just a few words about Smith.ai. You know, as you're looking to build efficiency, productivity, profitability, scalability in your law practice or in your business, whatever your professional service or product is. We have been around for 5 years now, and we do a lot more than answer calls. We answer chats, text, Facebook messages now too, which is increasingly a discovery place for attorneys and for legal services. We can screen, schedule, intake, calendar, make calls back to people who chat or fill out your web form who are inquiring about what is this legal product or service that you mentioned on your site. So we would be happy to give you a 20 call, 20 chat free trial. Many people who are here with us today, thank you, Michael, and others, you know and love Smith.ai and trust us, and we really become ingrained in their law firms and their practices. So we would be thrilled to do a free trial for you. We also have a totally free chat bot that we will do a white glove setup and install it on your site, speaking of not needing developers. And if you would like more information to get started, just visit Smith.ai. You can chat with us live there. You can call 650-727-6484, and you can email us at hello@smith.ai. So thank you all for being here. I will send the recording, and many, many thanks to Dorna and Erin for going deep with us today and giving us a peek behind the curtain, which is so rare to really dive in just an hour and learn so much.
Thanks, Maddy.
Thank you so much for having
Thanks,
us, Maddy.
Dorna.
Thank you, Erin.